Welcome, educators. Let's dive right into this explainer on teaching reading. Whether your students are reading for their future careers, for their studies, or honestly, just for the fun of it, our goal today is to hand you the ultimate toolkit. We're going to distill some essential pedagogical theories and pair them with highly practical classroom applications, all straight from our source material. By the end of this, you'll be completely equipped to turn your students into avid, highly capable readers. Let's get into it. Think of this agenda as our lesson plan for the explainer. We'll cover the power of reading, extensive versus intensive reading, and essential reading skills. Then we'll hit the 6 principles of reading, dynamic classroom activities, and finally, encouraging extensive reading. We're going to start with the foundational theory, and then we'll progressively zoom in until you've got actionable, dynamic activities ready for your very next class. Section 1. The power of reading, building the foundation. So, what's really at stake here? Teaching reading isn't just about passing a comprehension test. Our source points out that it's actually a massive driver for overall language acquisition. As long as your students generally understand what they're looking at, the more they read, the better their vocabulary and spelling will get. Plus, these texts act as fantastic models for English writing. They give us the perfect opportunity to show exactly how to construct crisp sentences, solid paragraphs, and cohesive texts. Which brings us to a crucial concept. We absolutely must prioritize what the literature calls joyful reading. The source material heavily emphasizes that extensive reading should really be about pleasure. Why? Because the data doesn't lie. The students who read the most progress the fastest, period. If they actually enjoy the process, they're going to read more, and their language skills will compound like crazy. Section 2. Extensive versus intensive reading. Clarifying the approach. Now, to successfully teach reading and actually spark that joy, we need a clear conceptual anchor. We have to distinguish between the 2 main types of reading our students are going to do. Let's break this down. Extensive reading is all about volume and pleasure, and it mostly happens outside the classroom walls. We're talking novels, web pages, magazines, and for your lower-level students, this is where you really want to push simplified or graded readers so they don't hit a wall of frustration. Now flip that over to intensive reading. This is the detailed, task-based deconstruction of texts that we actively guide them through inside the classroom. It comes with study activities, where we're really teasing out the nuances of meaning, grammar, and vocabulary. And for this, we're usually using authentic texts, like newspaper extracts or play scripts. Section 3. Essential reading skills, how we read. Depending on the text in front of them and their end goal, students have to deploy totally different cognitive skills. Let's isolate the 2 absolute most vital techniques they need to master. First up is scanning. Think of this as a highly targeted search mission. Imagine you're scanning a computer help window just to find that one specific line of code to fix a glitch, or you're looking through an article for a single person's name. You have to warn your students here. If they try to read every single word and line during this process, it is going to actively sabotage their ability to scan. Contrast that with skimming. This perfectly shows how we have to adapt our reading strategies on the fly. Skimming is like casting your eyes over the surface of a text just to get a general vibe of the topic or the main conclusion. It's like glancing at a film review just to see if the movie is a rom-com or a horror flick without reading the whole plot summary. Once again, if students get bogged down trying to gather all the tiny details, they're going to miss the big picture entirely. Section 4. 6 Principles of Reading, the Teacher's Rulebook. All right, we know how they read. Now, let's lay down the 6 core teaching principles. Consider this your pedagogical rulebook for any reading lesson you ever plan. Let's run through these. Rule 1. Encourage them to read as often and as much as possible. 2. Ensure they are genuinely engaged, whether they're reading for joy at home or intensely in class. 3, and this is huge, let them respond to the actual meaning and message of the text, not just its grammar. Give them the space to express how it made them feel. 4. Utilize prediction. 5. Match the task to the topic. Let's face it, a boring task can completely kill a great text, but an exciting task can elevate a totally commonplace one. And finally, Principle 6. Great teachers exploit reading texts to the absolute fullest. I want to really punch up Principle 4 for a second. When you and I read in our native languages, we usually have a pretty solid idea of what we're looking at before we even start. Book covers, photos, headlines. The second we get these clues, our brains kick into high gear and start predicting. As a teacher, you've got to deliberately use these visual clues. Trigger this active prediction process before your students read a single word. Section 5. Dynamic classroom activities. Putting theory into action. Okay, action phase. How do we take these abstract principles, like prediction, engagement, and exploiting the text, and turn them into dynamic things you can do in your classroom today? Picture a magazine-style article on sunscreen, which is actually perfect for pre-intermediate teenagers. But how do you get teens to care about sunscreen in English class? Well, you start with those visual clues. Show them the photos and the layout so they can predict what the text is about. Then, after they read it and study the language, maybe picking up some physical descriptions or teenage slang, you activate it. Don't just drop the text. Have them role-play an interview with the people in the article, or give a quick talk on sun protection. You are taking a static piece of paper and making it lived in. Let's level things up for your more advanced students. Enter the web quest. These are highly motivating because they turn reading into a real-world research mission. A typical web quest has 4 stages. You've got an introduction to set the background, a task section to explain the ultimate goal, a process stage where you give them curated web links so they aren't just endlessly lost on Google, and an evaluation stage to consolidate what they actually learned. Take, for example, this incredibly fun UFO web quest. The teacher gives the class a specific goal: organize a debate on whether UFOs are real. They use authentic, real-world websites to do their research. You divide the class into groups. You've got scientists, believers, maybe even alien abductees. And you give that abductee group highly specific tasks, like reading through real reported abduction stories to prepare their arguments. They are doing intensive reading of authentic English. But because they have this compelling goal and a fun character to play, their motivation is just off the charts. Let's rapid fire a couple more. Have you tried jigsaw reading? You basically take 3 different texts about the exact same event and give one to each group. Then, you mix the groups up so each student holds a different piece of the puzzle. It is brilliant. It gives them an organic, real-world reason to read carefully and then forces them to communicate what they've learned to piece the whole story together. Another fantastic tool, reading puzzles. You can literally chop up a text so each paragraph is on a different slip of paper. A wonderful variation from our source is taking a poem, like Robert Frost's Fire and Ice, and chopping up the lines. When you force students to reassemble those lines, it pushes them to dig deep into their minds for contextual clues and grammatical logic. They aren't just passively reading, they're actively rebuilding the author's intent. Section 6. Encouraging extensive reading, creating the habit. Finally, how do we push this beyond the classroom? How do we actually get students to build a habit of that joyful, extensive reading we talked about earlier? Our source lays out 4 non-negotiable pillars for this. First, library. You have to build a collection of simplified or graded readers at various levels. Second, choice. You have to let students decide what genre and level they read, or enthusiasm will plummet. Third, feedback. Ditch the formal joy-killing book reports. Use low-stakes feedback, like a quick comment card tucked inside the book cover so the next reader can see it. And fourth, time. You have to carve out actual 10-minute reading periods in class. And here is the kicker. You need to sit down and read alongside them to actually model the behavior. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Think back to Principle 6. Are you truly exploiting your reading text to the absolute full, or are you just letting students answer a few multiple choice questions, drop the text, and move on? I challenge you this week to weave every single text you use into a compelling sequence, whether that's a wild UFO debate, a role play, or a Robert Frost puzzle. Spark that genuine curiosity and keep your students hungry for the next page. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy teaching.